I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of my dad's judgment. I was afraid of everything. And the flip that made it for me was just using that fear against something bigger, was that I was more afraid of looking back on my life and never having tried.
Most people would understand from here that the solution is fear. Use your fear. But that is partially true, because what he did is actually guide his fear in a very specific way. He was more afraid of the person that he would become if he would not change anything, if he would not take action. Which points to the fact that fear in itself is just a tool that has to be used and focused and guided in the right way, applied against the right thing. Otherwise, everyone has fears, and they are using their fears in very different ways, and you can see that the results can vary greatly. So it's not just having fear, it's understanding how can I guide my fear in a way that will actually make me to transform into something better? How can I use this fear to push me over the edge, over that threshold of action, and not let the fear to actually sink me in, stop me, destroy me.
And so it's like, if you can just put it behind you so that you're running away from this future, it's like run harder away from the future that your current path is taking you towards that you're afraid of than the short-term path that running away from it is going to run you into. Fear the whip of the person behind you or the enemy in front of you, and the direction you face is the one that you fear the least.
The enemy is always you. We are our worst enemy. If you really pay attention, we get in our own way. Most of the time, there is no one stopping you to become successful. There is nothing preventing you. It's not the government, it's not the YouTube algorithm, it's not the world is against you. It's your own patterns are preventing you from transforming yourself to go to the next level. And this is very important to understand. The enemy, it's us. It's our own patterns that we cannot really get away from. And when you understand that, it makes it such a different approach. Because every time when you're facing an obstacle, every time when something shows your way and you go like, oh my God, this is hard, this is unexpected, you understand, wait, it's my result. It's somehow that my actions led to this, and that gives me power to actually change things. But when we qualify the word enemy, or we attribute that to someone else, to some sort of circumstances, that is very disempowering, because we feel like a victim. We feel like, well, I tried this and that. I tried to run away from that version of myself that I don't want, but the enemy in front of me is preventing me to go there. And most people will attribute to the word enemy whatever they are struggling with. For example, you're on YouTube, you want to build an audience, you want to share your ideas, but you're not getting traction. Most people would say, oh, the enemy is the YouTube algorithm. That's the enemy. They take this bigger thing and they make it into an enemy such that they can justify to themselves, this is why I failed. Or you are in a relationship and things don't work and you realize that you have something lacking, or you want to change and transform something about yourself, but they make it about the other person. The other person doesn't allow me to change. The other person is the reason why I cannot change. They are not allowing me. Or let's say you have a business and you're struggling with something, and I don't know, the government changes the law in some sort of way, the market shifts in some sort of direction, and that failure gets attributed to the enemy, the market, the government, something external. And for as long as you do that, you are outsourcing the power that otherwise you always have to change things in the right direction.
People leak out who they are in the breaths in between the things that they're doing. Somebody's character is not revealed with how they pick you up on the first date, but it's how they treat the waiter, whether or not they hold the door open for somebody else who goes in.
People are way more complex these days, and we got very good at portraying an image about ourselves, like constructing an image about ourselves that is not true. That is, in this example, you take someone on their on your first date, and you go like, you know what? I don't care how they're going to portray themselves to me, but I do pay attention to see how they speak to the waiter. Yeah, but keep in mind that in their view, how they speak to the waiter when you are present is part of the first date, is part of the same image they're constructing. This is true only when you learn to observe people without them knowing that you are paying attention. You're not going to really know people by understanding what happens between the breaths. Well, because most of the times you're not going to be there. And if you're going to be there, most of the times they will know that you're watching. So therefore now they are continuing to construct this image. This is not really a good way to know people. If you really want to know who they truly are, you have to allow them to be themselves and never confront them, like never really tell them, hey, you know what, this bothers me, or I don't like this, or even not telling them in advance, oh, this is the kind of people that I like. This is the kind of people that I don't like. This is my red flags. These are my green flags. Because by doing that, you are going to give them the keys for them to construct exactly the type of image that would work with you for them to get what they want from you. Unfortunately, this is the truth. Of course, there are some people who are more oriented towards truth, and there are some people who are very, very far from it. And you're never going to know the difference between or based on their words. If you pay attention online, for example, everyone says, oh, I'm an honest person. I like people who are honest. I don't like to lie. Everyone says the same thing, and everyone, breaks this rule habitually and without even realizing to themselves in their context, in that moment when they lie or they do something like this, that kind of contradicts the image that otherwise they're portraying. For them, it looks like, no, but I had to do that because they have reasons, they have justifications, they have very good explanations that they use, so they don't even know that. But to really pay attention to those moments, it means for you to not even let them know what you think about them. Because the moment when you do, well, the gig is up. They already know that they are heading in the right direction and they're going to adjust, but they're not going to adjust becoming a different person. They are going to adjust temporarily their actions such that you adjust your view on them. And that's a very, very dangerous act. Because again, at the end of the day, you're going to end up with the image that you told them that you want to see. Some people are going to purposefully make you see what you want to see. So your job, if you reverse engineer this, your job is to never tell people what you like, what you appreciate, what you don't like. Just let them be like, you be you, and I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to make my decision if you are the kind of person for me or not.
And so, again, part of the reason I think of having so much practice, being a proxy for the preparation, is that you will have been exposed to so many different conditions that none of them.
This is what happens when the clicker stops working.
Exactly. And I had that happen during one of them. One of my practices, the two times I had the clicker stop working. So I was like, oh, am I going to do that? Like, it didn't happen when we were live. One of the issues.
Had it have happened, you've already run that.
Right. There's all these different permutations that, like, it's like you can decrease the likelihood of failure if you try and get all the failures out before it counts.
However, there is another way. It's just stop trying to be perfect and be okay in advance with anything that comes your way. The moment when you take the stage, or you have to give a presentation, or you have to perform, just realize that if something goes wrong, that is also part of the possibilities of what could happen once I start this. Consciousness is infinite, possibilities are infinite, and you're not going to be able in a limited life to map all of that. However, if in advance you prepare and you are okay with anything that might go wrong, even if one of those instances, something happens that is absolutely unexpected, it never happened before, so otherwise you'll be like, oh my God, I never encountered this before, I'm going to freeze, I don't know what to do next, because I've never seen this before. If you are prepared for anything, and if you trust yourself that, yeah, okay, unexpected things can happen. And I don't know what that would be because possibilities are endless. But I know and I trust in myself that whenever that happens, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to figure it out when it happens.
You'd be surprised how far you can get by only knowing what you want and not accepting anything else until you get it.
The really hard part about this is actually knowing what you actually want. Because most people want the things that other people sold them, convinced them, influenced them to want. And knowing what you want, it's more difficult than it sounds. Because if you ask most people, like, what do you want? To be like, oh, they have things that they want, or they say, I want this, I want that, but not knowing really that, do you? Is that really what you want, or what your parents want, what your friends want? Is it this coming from you or from your favorite Instagram influencer that sold you on the idea? Knowing what you want is one of the hardest things because it requires self-awareness. It requires being and attending with yourself, staying in that silence and solitude to really get to know yourself, what really matters to you, what you want, and what you don't want. And when you really put in that time, you're going to make this bubble, this separation between you and other. And sometimes you might think, yeah, but there is not really a separation. Like me and other, we are all one, and we are all cells of the same universe, and we are agents of life, and together collectively, all this intelligence, we are all one. Yes, we are all one from that perspective. From a high level perspective, let's say cosmic perspective, we are all one. However, all the agents inside the word all, that means individuals, and that means you. And then you say, just like cells in the body, you need to understand what you're specialized with. Cells in the body literally are different type of cells. It's skin cells, muscle cells, bone cells, whatever. And they are all specialized in a very different way, but collectively working together to sustain your body and your life. But them individually, they do know, they specialize in what type of cell am I? What is my role in the body? How do I work with other cells? So knowing that, it's considering that you are like billions and trillions of cells coming together, knowing what you, all of that collectiveness, all that intelligence coming together, that is very difficult. And most people, it's difficult because most people never put in the time to get to know themselves and know what they want.
So we've talked about commitment and decisions a lot. I find it interesting, like decisions, the root of that from Latin is decadere, which is to cut off. And commitment is the elimination of alternatives. And so they're almost like, cousin words in terms of their meaning.
Decision, the root word is cutting off. Yes, when you make the decision, you are cutting off alternatives. And then commitment is elimination of all alternatives. Yes, but here is where it gets interesting. Commitment could be and can be made in the moment, and it feels like you are eliminating all alternatives, right? But what happens 3 weeks, 5 months, 7 years later on a commitment that you made in the past, where you have eliminated all the alternatives? Well, you see, the alternatives are always dancing around you. They are always tempting you. They are always trying to get back on the table and make you flip your decision. If decision is like really, the root word is from cutting or to cut out. Yeah, that happens when you make the decision. But as we progress in life from day to day, from week and months and years, the same decision can be overturned. And it doesn't mean that you have made the decision in the past and that will last forever because, well, you just cut things and you have eliminated all the alternatives. That happens at the moment in the past when you have made the decision, when you have made the commitment. But you see, decisions and commitment have to be upheld. They have to be respected and they have to be honored day by day because the temptation is always there. The possibility of negotiating is always there. So it requires It requires a commitment towards the commitment. It requires also a decision towards never going back to remake, to renegotiate that decision. And that is harder than it looks.
What you want is what you're willing to sacrifice for, right? And so if we want multiple things, which one of the things that we still want are we willing to sacrifice for the one that we want more? And I think if you get clear on the thing that you're willing to sacrifice other things for, that you're willing to put all those things on the altar to sacrifice for the one thing, life gets, to our point earlier about simplicity, much easier because you have a singular lens to make all decisions through.
Correct. But although life gets easier when you have a single lens, when you have made the commitment and you eliminated all the alternatives, we don't wake up with the same lens every single day. Have you noticed sometimes you make a decision today, oh, I'm going to start this diet, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You make a decision, you make a commitment, and then from each day you wake up slightly with a different attitude, with a different outlook on life, with a different view. And especially this happens when important things happen in your life. Maybe you go through a breakup, maybe you lose a loved one, maybe you lose your job, your house, your life gets turned upside down. Well, when that happens, you are not going to wake up with the same lens. And that is exactly where it makes it very difficult for you to make a commitment today and then go through all of that chaos, all of that ups and downs, being pulled in all those directions. And 3 years later, on a random Tuesday, you wake up with the same lens because your lenses are constantly switched. You literally wake up with a different view. You wake up with a different person looking at the same world in a different way. And whatever used to make sense no longer makes sense. And you have a commitment that now you tend to renegotiate.
The hard part for most people is making the decision that this is what they want. Not once you made the decision, following through.
Yeah, it's the elimination of alternatives, not the...
This part is actually, I don't agree. I would say it's not true. I don't want to be rude, but the most difficult part is actually maintaining. It's actually pretty easy to make decisions. People make decisions all the time and they do not honor, they do not respect those decisions. Literally, they break those decisions all the time. The hard part is follow through execution. And that is because it's hard to wake up as the same person with the same view, with the same level of commitment towards something that you have seen, a truth that you have seen and committed in the past. That is actually the most difficult part because you are constantly being bombarded by life. And otherwise you have to keep fresh and alive in your mind something that is just a vision. It's not something that you can feel. It doesn't have physicality, but everything else around you, the distractions, have pure physicality to it. Your phone with all the TikToks and Instagram and the distractions inside, that has physicality. Like literally you can look at your phone and compare that or contrast that with like this image that you're looking at, like you're looking at me right now. Contrast that with just holding an idea in your mind that is somehow connected with some sort of unclear actions that you have to take consistently. Well, that is a lot more difficult because reality is distracting and opposing our vision. You see, our vision is something that it's a potential reality that we can see, could construct, we could become in the future, but it's just that, it's a vision. It's not real yet. And this is why this is I always say that life is a perfect design. The creator made it like a perfect design such that if your mind is strong enough to really see something in the future, project, design something, and then hold that image strong in your mind, despite the distractions, despite everything that will come your way, and you are able to follow through with actions when it's going to be difficult, when you're not going to feel like it, eventually that is the person that can change and alter reality, because the admission towards that, it's that strong mindset that they had in order to transform their vision from unreal, just a projection, just an image, into reality.